Hello and welcome to Ahval TV. We have today Kemal Chomani, who is a Kurdish political analyst and non-resident fellow at Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy. Welcome to.
Thanks for having me.
Kemal Chomani has been following the situation in northern Syria as well as Afrin very closely. And today our main subject is again Afrin, that we have been trying to cover very closely. Kamal, can you tell us, first of all, it has been, I think, 33rd or 34th day of Turkish operation into Afrin. As far as I can see, there are two approaches there. One arguing that Turkish operation is actually successful because they are closing in, creating this belt by the Turkish border. And another approach is that no, it has been more than a month. Turkey still only took over part of the Afrin, and this is very costly. Which argument which argument do you think makes sense better?
You know, at the beginning, when the Turkish assault on Afrin started, as you know, Turkish President Erdogan promised that the Turkish army and the proxies of Turkey will be in Afrin in hours or in days. But as we have seen thus far, it has been more than a month, and the YPG and the Kurdish forces are still resisting, and they have protected Afrin. And as you know, Turkish army and the proxies of Turkey, like the Free Syrian Army, all the some remnants of the ISIS, as well as the Islamic extremists in Syria, all have joined together, whereas YPG is alone, and it has only been 2 days that there have been an agreement. So thus far, even though there have been some advance with regard to the Turkish army to advance to Afrin, but the YPG has resisted, and they have defended Afrin very well. Now I think it is a huge success for the YPG. And as compared, you know, if you compare the forces, the YPG has just been there for 5 years, and the Turkish army is the second biggest army in NATO, and the Turkish army has been a very strong army for the last 100 years. And how can you compare these two armies? And let alone that Turkey is supported by many forces regionally and locally and internationally, whereas YPG is still, even though in Syria it has been supported by the coalition forces, especially the United States, but it has remained alone in Afrin. And for all these reasons, I think the Turkish army has not been successful, and the YPG has been very much successful in protecting Afrin thus far.
Let me ask this. We all have been following that the pro-Assad militias are coming to help. First of all, can you tell us what do you know about these new militias, or however you want to define it? They are coming to help YPG in Afrin. Who are they? And what do you think the importance of this new, fresh forces for the Afrin region?
You know, the YPG, or let's say the Rojava administration and the Syrian government relation, is not something new. There has not been real clashes, real fighting between these two forces, like the Syrian government as well as the Kurdish forces in Syria, because there were a common enemy and they were fighting together. And people were, in political analysis, even the Kurdish people were expecting clashes to happen following the complete defeat of Daesh or ISIS. But when Daesh is about to be eliminated, then both sides, the Kurdish forces, the Kurdish people in Syria, as well as the Syrian government, found a new enemy, a new common enemy, which is Turkey. So whereas people were expecting both sides to clash, and new fighting were expected between the Syrian government and the Kurdish people, or the Syrian Kurdish administration, but the Turkish assault on Afrin stopped that clashes and made the Kurdish people or the Kurdish administration to get closer to the Syrian government. And now they have reached a kind of agreement in which both sides, it's a win-win game, that the Syrian government as well as the Kurdish forces needed this agreement. The identity of the pro-Assad regime thus far is not very much clear, but as it has been announced, it is that the Popular Protection Forces or pro-Assad militia. But as we have seen, they have raised the Syrian regime flag, and the Syrian government has officially commented about the force that it belongs to the Syrian government. And from the Kurdish side as well, they have also reported that this force belongs to the Syrian government. And it is a very smart game for both sides, for the Syrian government as well as for the Kurdish administration. I think it is it's a turning point in the relations between the Syrian government as well as the Kurdish.
Let me interrupt here. The argument in Turkey, in pro-government media and pundits, they are kind of complaining, or I don't know, they are, criticizing the YPG or Syrian Kurds that, they are choosing the Assad regime over Turkey, or they are choosing, Hezbollah or Iranian-backed militias over Turkey, or how come they get in partnership with pro-Assad forces against Turkey? What do you say to these arguments?
After 2011, when the Syrian revolution started, and especially when in 2012, the Kurdish political parties started and the Kurdish people started the revolution as well. So it was the Kurdish PYD leader, Saleh Muslim, who visited Turkey and met with the foreign ministry several times, I think 4 times. And there have been meetings between even the PKK and the Turkish government with regard to Syria. The Kurdish people in Syria, as well as the YPG, the PYD, as well as the PKK, were all trying so that the Kurdish relations with Turkey will be at least the kind of relation that the Kurdistan regional government has with Turkish government. But when the peace talks failed in 2015 and followed by the coup in Turkey, it went wrong. And Erdogan, especially the Erdogan and AK Party government, started accusing the Kurdish YPG and the Kurdish people, the Kurdish political parties and the forces in Rojava. Everyone knows that, ideologically, the YPG and the PKK are connected. And it's not only the YPG, there are lots of forces, not only Kurdish, there have been other forces around the world that they are influenced by Abdullah Öcalan ideology. And the YPG, this connection, Turkey could have benefited from this ideological connection between the YPG and the PKK, and also the social connection between the Kurdish the Kurdish people in Syria as well as in Turkey. Because as you know, the Kurdish people in Syria and Turkey, they are more connected as compared to the Kurdish people in Syria with Iraq or Syria with Iran. But unfortunately, Turkish government, especially AK Party and Erdogan, they mixed everything and they didn't accept the Kurdish partnership. Otherwise, I do believe that the Kurdish people, even the PKK and the YPG, would prefer a Turkish partnership other than, as compared to the current agreement.
Do you think that the recent remarks coming from Ankara, whether, Afrin's Arab city or we are going to lay a siege in Afrin in, a couple days, or, we are going to get rid of terrorists from YPG in Afrin. Those kind of rhetoric made any change, or this was already in the works that YPG was going to get in partnership with the Damascus regime?
I think when the peace talks failed, then the Kurdish in Syria realized that if Kurdish question in Turkey will not be resolved, then this partnership with Turkey will not be successful. And it was completely right, because when the peace talks were there were somehow a kind of relations with the Kurdish Rojava, as well as with, there were meetings between both sides, and the meetings were developing. But when the peace talks failed, then everything went wrong. And I think the rhetoric and the accusations that are coming from Turkey, and eventually that led to this Turkish assault on Afrin, I think it is the main reason that through the Kurdish political forces and military forces in Rojava to the hands of Syrian government, because in Afrin, as you know, neither Russia nor the United States were able to protect the Kurds, because Russia, as you know, there was a kind of agreement with Turkey, and the United States was not ready to protect Afrin. Then the Kurdish people and the Kurdish Rojava, they didn't have any other chances other than approaching Syria to reach an agreement to protect Afrin, because there have been it is not easy to protect Afrin and to continue this fighting, because the Kurdish people are fighting by their blood, whereas the Turkish army it's a technology fight. They cannot continue this fight against all these NATO weapons. This is why I believe the Kurdish people, the Kurdish administration approached the Syrian government.
I'm going to ask one final question. We're already over time, but I just want to add that it's really ironic that the Ankara has been drawing this picture that the Assad regime is the most evil regime in the world for years, which Assad regime indeed did a lot of very brutal campaign against not only the armed militants, but also oppositions, including civilians. But became so Ankara administration image became so bad that the Kurds have chosen over Turkey. I mean, Kurds have chosen Damascus over Ankara. So there's a lesson for Ankara about their intentions and how they are being seen by Kurds. I think there's a big lesson for Ankara to, put their head in front of them and think about it. How did they get in this position, this image? My final question is, what do you think about the U.S.-Turkey relationship at this point? Do you think these newest working groups are going to solve anything? Do you think these disagreements over Manbij or U.S. partnership with Syrian Kurds will be somehow solved, differences will be solved between Washington and Ankara?
First of all, it's very sad that the Turkish government, especially Erdogan, made the Kurds to choose Bashar Assad, whom they know very well. And if no one knows who is Bashar Assad, the Kurdish people know very well. And we have a history with the aggression and with the brutality of Bashar Assad. But finally, Erdogan, especially after he raised the Kurdish cities in Diyarbakir, in Nusaybin, in Jazir, in Shirnakh, so people have realized there is there's not very much difference for the Kurdish between Assad and Erdogan. If
So
Assad
you are
had
saying
been
this is the image of Ankara when you look at from Kurdish side, Syrian Kurdish side.
Exactly. Not only the Kurdish from Syrian side, even from the Kurdistan region, other than some Ikhwani people and the KDP supporters, all the Kurdish people are, are looking at the Erdogan and Turkish government with the same lens that they are looking at Bashar Assad regime. So to answer your question, I think, for the United States, Turkey remains a strategic partner in the region. But I don't think Erdogan will remain. And for the United States, it happened the same in the Kurdistan region. Masoud Barzani was the leader of the Kurdistan, was the president of the Kurdistan region. And the United States wanted this partnership to continue, but Masoud Barzani became the person who interrupted this partnership, and eventually the United States chose Baghdad over the Kurdistan region. But for the United States, Kurdistan region remains a partner. I think it is the same. Erdogan will not be trusted anymore after supporting ISIS, after disrupting the American and the coalition.
Erdogan supported ISIS? Do you think Erdogan supported ISIS?
Of course. And it's very much clear how, Erdogan supported ISIS. And I think Turkey, the United States looks for finding a new alternative for Erdogan, but the current political situation or political map in Turkey might be not easy to find an alternative. So I think Erdogan also has realized very well that advancing to Manbij is not easy. That Ottoman slap will not be easy to slap at the United States. And I don't think that Afrin will be occupied by the Turkish government or the Turkish army. And eventually, I believe Erdogan will be defeated in Syria, and because the Syrian friends of Erdogan are not democratic forces. They are not loved by the United States or the international community, and they are hated by the Syrian government, Russia, Iran, as well as the Kurdish. So Erdogan has remained alone, which is something very bad for Turkey and for the whole region, because Turkey is a strong power, regional power. And but I think what Erdogan wants is not only occupying Afrin, but it is using Afrin and the Afrin assault to further oppress the political dissent in Turkey, as well as winning the upcoming presidential elections.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kamal Chomani. I really appreciate it. This was very informative. We are over time. We can go on another hour on these issues, but I'm hoping to host you again in upcoming weeks, as it looks like the Afrin situation and Turkey's tanglement with Syria is going to continue. Again, so much for your time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.